Hey everybody, Jam Creates here, doing another Commuter cast. Haven't done one in a few days. I've been posting some other kind of stuff, some comic book reviews, old comic book stuff, whatever. I wanted to talk today about a little bit about comic books and turning them into movies and video games and other stuff, and then video games and movies and all that kind of stuff, and why so many times it just doesn't work, or why it does work when it does work. Video games to movies have been traditionally a cesspool of terrible movies. Everybody knows the story of, if you're at all into video games, the story of the Super Mario Brothers movie, which was Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo and Dennis Hopper, and was just absolutely insane and terrible, and how Nintendo ever allowed that movie to be made. It's a whole thing. There's I think there's literally there might even be a book about it at this point, because it was a whole ridiculous thing, and it made Nintendo stay away from licensing out their IP to be made into movies for decades, because it was so bad. And a lot of people will recall, a lot of my comic book fans out there, they recall some of the early comic book stuff, movies and TV shows wasn't necessarily so great. Wonder Woman, the old TV show with Linda Carter, it's incredibly cheesy, but it was, at the time, it was well liked and it was fun and people enjoyed it. So it wasn't a bad thing. I'm not going to say anything bad about it, because you look back on something now, 30 years, 40 years later, yeah, of course you can make fun of it. Whatever, the special effects weren't that great. It was a TV show from the 70s, for crying out loud. What do you want? But it was good. It stayed, fairly true to the character and the ideals, and it was a show about a superheroine beating up bad guys, So, can't really go wrong there. Obviously, if you were, super hardcore Wonder Woman, lore follower, I'm sure there was a lot of things that would have bothered you. But I feel like back in the 70s, people weren't as attached to the lore as people are now. They weren't so hardcore about, is this canon, is this canon, is that canon, canon's to the left of me, canon's to the right. No. People get really hung up on that stuff now, and I feel like they just didn't back then. It wasn't as much of a thing, which is why something like, the 60s Batman show, which I still love to this day. I think that show is hysterically funny. And I love it. And I loved it when I was a kid too, even though I didn't understand that it wasn't meant to be taken seriously. When I was a kid, it's funny because that show's been around for so long, and for my entire life, because I was born in the 70s, so that show was already over by the time I was born. For me, as a little kid, I took that show completely seriously, and I loved Batman, and I loved Robin, and I wanted to be Batman and Robin, and I particularly loved Robin when I was a kid. For whatever reason, I had Robin underoos, and I just took it for, hey, it's the good guys against the bad guys, and let's do this, and then when I was older, it was funny, because then I didn't see it for a long time, and then they were showing it again in reruns when I was in high school, and, you're 16, 17, you think you know everything, you think you're smarter than everybody, even though you're an idiot. I watched that show back then, and my friends and I used to just laugh at it, because we were like, this is so stupid, I can't believe they did that, oh, that's so dumb. We were the morons, because we were looking at it like it was meant to be taken seriously, and it was just really funny, because it was so stupid, it was funny. And then now, as an adult, I look back, I watch the show, and I laugh hysterically, because I see what, amazing satire that show was, and how hysterically funny it was for what it was, because they played everything straight, and it was just so funny. And the funniest thing is as a kid, I made my own comic books as a kid, and one of the comic books I made, and I've shared this online. You can find it. It's on my website, and I think I may have put it on my Tapas. I'm not sure. At least one of the issues I think is on there, because I made more than one. I made a spoof of Batman and of the Batman TV show. I made a Batman spoof called like Fat Man and Ruben. I didn't put that much thought into it, let's be honest. And the whole thing is basically just a long riff on the 60s TV show. So essentially I made a spoof of a satire because I was an idiot kid who just didn't know any better. But whatever, it was fun. I enjoyed making it, and I think if you read it, you'll understand. If you look at it with that mindset, you'll understand where I was coming from, and it's just pretty funny. But then you get to, I feel like, when you get to the 80s, things were starting to be taken more seriously. You had things like the Incredible Hulk TV show, which I always enjoyed. To be honest, I have not gone back and watched that in a really long time, so I don't know if it holds up. I'm sure the special effects are lame. But, I remember as a kid really enjoying it, and, so it was what it was. I was a kid in the 80s, and so the Hulk was cool to me. I had an Incredible Hulk t-shirt. I had an Incredible Hulk Mego figure. He was cool. He had the ripped purple pants and everything. But, that was, it was cool. I liked it. So, whatever. It did its job at the time. It was very popular, so obviously it did its job. But again, I don't think in the 80s people really cared about the canon. I don't think there was a lot of people who were like, no, I've read every issue and I take umbrage with the way they portrayed. Well, listen, right from the get-go, instead of calling him Bruce Banner, they called him David Banner. So, right from the get-go, if you did that now, like, let's say all of a sudden tomorrow, Marvel announced there's going to be a new Incredible Hulk movie, and now they're going to call the Hulk David Banner instead of Bruce Banner. People would lose their mind. They'd be like, what are you doing? That's not my Hulk. You ruined the character. Blah, blah, blah. Like, because people flip out about that stuff. And listen, I am not above that. I flip out about stuff too. I don't bother anybody about it. I might complain about it, but I don't I don't bother. I don't tweet at people and complain how could you do this or whatever. I thought it was silly when they did that Fantastic Four movie and they had, what's his name? Was it Michael B. Jordan? I forget who it is. The guy who was Johnny Storm in the movie, being an African-American person because he's supposed to be Sue Storm's brother. And Johnny Storm was always blonde hair, blue-eyed. So it just seemed kind of silly to me to do that. But then again, I've never really understood, if you're making something of a character, why mess with it? But I think that's part of the thing that goes on with this is inherently, movies and comic books and movies and video games and all these, they are different mediums, and so they require different things. If you're making a movie, it can't be the same thing as a huge multi-year, plot line from a comic book. Same thing with video games. Some video games are 100 hours long. Well, no one's going to go sit and watch a 100-hour movie. So when you're making a movie, and let's be honest, most of these movies based on video games are going to probably fall into the $140 range in terms of length, because if they made them any longer, they just no one would want to sit through it. But you're trying to cram 100 hours of content into, an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. It's not going to really be the same thing. You're going to have to make some edits. And the same goes for comic books. When you're trying to, translate this huge epic storyline that was, 20 issues and crossovers and all this other stuff into, an hour and 42 hours, it's difficult to have every single piece of what was in the original in there. And you're never going to make everybody happy, because some piece of that you're going to cut out was somebody's favorite. And that's why I've always kind of been a big proponent of just leaving things as they are. Like, just let video games be video games. Let comic books be comic books. Now, don't get me wrong. I get excited about this stuff. When the original Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire came out, I loved that movie. And I still like that movie. And I said at the time, I thought it was the best comic book movie I've seen. And I was really excited about it before it came out, because I was like, cool, because Spider-Man was always my favorite, and to see my favorite character up on the big screen was an exciting prospect. So I understand it. I get it. I know why you get excited about it, and then when it disappoints you, you get really annoyed by it. But sometimes I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like I don't want to say we shouldn't take these things seriously, because we love, these are our hobbies. These are things we enjoy. These are things we love. We love these characters. We love these stories. And we should enjoy them, and we should take them seriously, and they should be respected. But I also think when you already have the original story, for example, let's take the X-Men, for example, right? We've got the Dark Phoenix saga. And then when they make the X-Men films and they try to put that in there, and it just kind of falls flat on its face, it's okay, whatever. I'm not going to take it that seriously. It's not going to ruin my enjoyment of the original thing because maybe the movie wasn't that great. I still have the comic books to go back and read, and they still exist, and they're still awesome. The difference comes in, the real problem comes in when they try to take something in comic book form that was a comic book already and then ruin it. Like when they try to take the characters and then just make them something they're not. I was always a huge fan of Cyclops. I always loved Cyclops. I always felt like everybody's favorite was always Wolverine. My favorite was Cyclops because he was the leader. And he had to make the hard decisions. Wolverine would just leave. He would constantly just leave. He would not play according to the team. He would go off on his own. He would do things that would get other people put in danger. Meanwhile, Scott stuck it out. Scott was always there, always trying to be the leader, always trying to hold the team together, always trying to bring Xavier's dream, to fruition, always trying to help people, always, like, Scott was the thankless guy who goes out there and does everything day in and day out. He's the guy who builds the foundation and everything else, and then the one guy comes in and, cuts the ribbon and has the grand opening and takes all the glory. Meanwhile, Scott was the one who ran the construction crew, had the whole thing built from start to finish, and then this dude just came in at the end, cuts the ribbon, and is like, hey, look at me, I'm the hero. And that's why I always respected. It's funny because Leonardo was always probably my favorite turtle. Optimus Prime was always my favorite Transformer, and Scott Summers' Cyclops was always my favorite X-Man. I've always liked the leaders, and the leaders were never were never the favorites. It's always the rebel that's always the favorite. Everybody likes Lance from Voltron. Everybody loves Wolverine. Everybody likes Raphael or Michelangelo or even Donatello. The leaders, everybody always disses on the leaders, but without the leaders, the stuff doesn't get done. You need the leadership. So I took a little turn here. I'm home, so I'm out. I will see you guys soon. If you like this video, give it a like. I got some new followers. I'm super excited about that. Some new subscribers, some new followers on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter. It's @jam_creates. I'm Jam Creates on YouTube. I'm on BitChute Jam Creates there. I'm on Tapas Jam Creates. I'm Jam Creates everywhere, dude. So just check me out, follow me, like this video, subscribe, the whole 9 yards, hit the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. I've got some more comic book reviews coming. I've got some new comics coming, so look for those. And that's it. I'm out. I will talk to you soon.